Hi there, my lovely people. My name's Alex, and I run the Autism Acceptance page on Facebook. Obviously, if you're seeing this on Facebook, you'll know that. If you're seeing it on YouTube, I will drop a link in the comment section to my Facebook page where you can go along and check it out. I cover a wide range of topics from a neurodiversity standpoint, and one of the reasons I set up the page was because of a wonderful lady called Donna Williams, who shaped how we see autism and how we treat and deal with autistic people, and highlighted the diversity of the spectrum and the broadness of the spectrum. And in fact, she has an interesting take on the puzzle piece analogy. I know the puzzle piece is very controversial because of our friends, that's sarcasm by the way, down at Autism Speaks, but it's not, Autism Speaks hasn't got the copyright on the puzzle piece. We should not owe them the puzzle piece. They do not own it, and it can be used for many different things. And this is what Donna Williams, the late great autistic author, advocate, poet, songwriter, many things, artist. This is what she says about the puzzle piece. She says refers to a bucket full of jigsaws. So she starts off with a little rhyme. She's a bit silly, but then she goes into the mechanics and the details of it, and she really does go into the mechanics and the details. So, an interesting tumble, a boggledy jumble, this weed full of gardens, this door to the key, this dish full of sinks, this pea full of pods, this backwards gone forwards, this me. Autism is spoken of by people as a jigsaw with a missing piece. I experienced my own autism as a bucket with several different jigsaws in it, all jumbled together and all missing a few pieces each, but with a few extra pieces that didn't belong to any of the jigsaws. The first dilemma for me was sorting out which pieces belonged to which jigsaws. From there, I had to work out which pieces were missing and which ones weren't supposed to be in the bucket at all. When I was an infant, my senses didn't work right, and my responses to light and sound and touch were not just meaningless, but too acute. I could not only not understand the world, but I also could not stand it. Up until I was about 3 years old, I don't think I knew I had problems. I had no consistent processing for meaning through any of my senses, and no consistent meaning for anything that happened to me within the immediate context of when it happened, or which it happened. I made no consistent meaning out of touch that happened to me, and made no consistent meaning out of what I touched beyond a texture. I made no consistent meaning out of what I saw, or other people's responses to seeing me, or what I heard, including what I said, and other people's responses to hearing me. I made no consistent meaning out of my body in space, or what I looked like. Or any of my body messages or emotions, or the behaviours they sometimes drove me to. I couldn't understand the meaning or significance of what was expected of me, because other people's words, intonation, facial expressions, body language and touch had no consistent meaning, and therefore little to no significance. I couldn't understand much about consequences or effect. The inability to get consistent meaning through any of my senses in an environment that demanded that I did meant that I developed an acute ability to respond not to meaning but to pattern. I didn't remember thinking of these things as problems. In fact, as far as I can remember, the first idea that there was any problem was that the problem wasn't with me, it was with the thing stuck on me that I came to know as my body. It was with the intangible, uncontrollable, and overwhelming assaults I came to know as emotions. And it was the unpredictable, incomprehensible, illogical actions of what I came to know as people and their expectations. But me, I probably figured that I wouldn't have had any of these problems if I could have got rid of all of these things. The expectation to respond when I didn't understand or want or feel safe with the emotions that are meant to drive the interest, need or want to communicate was a problem. The expectations to use a body and face and voice I was perceptually disconnected from was a problem. The expectation to respond immediately with understanding when my ability to process anything for meaning was slow, out of context, and incomplete was a problem. My initial answer to these problems was to fight them off, ignore them, or run away from them. Within a few years, I found that no amount of rejection on my part, no amount of tuning people out, no amount of retaliation was going to make these stubborn and persistent expectations go away. My answer now to these problems of expectations was to feed the emotions I was expected to have but didn't feel safe with, to feed the interest I didn't have, to communicate with a copied voice and to move with mirrored movements in absence of personal connection of my own, and to learn to look as if I understood even when I didn't. Around the age of 10, when consistent though generally delayed meaning started coming more consistently through my senses, the problem was that my mind was bombarded with placeless fragments of literal meaning that I had no interest or want or need to find and didn't know what to do with. My answer to this was to find structure with which to use these things. I expanded the only thing I had in place of interest and want, obsession and compulsion. Because my processing for meaning had been happening, but was delayed and out of context in which the meaningful events happened. Most of my processing for meaning was subconscious, and not even I knew it was there. Mid-childhood was a time of having all this processed but subconscious knowing and awareness triggered, and that came out. What came out surprised me as much as other people. Mid-childhood was also a time where the old reliance upon pattern and the newly developed reliance upon meaning became a psychological, emotional, and social battle that many children never have to face. This was a time of realizing the irony of a sanctuary that is also a prison. It was a time of experimenting with the boundaries of meaning and the boundaries of pattern. The reliance upon and triggering by pattern combined with sensory fascination in the absence of efficient processing for meaning or personal significance fed into the hands of compulsion and obsession. The control over which I had already been pushed to its limits because of the degree of chronic stress I was under. Compulsion and obsession can be your friend and foe, and at different times they were both. On the one hand, I was being swept along with the tide of my own sensory pleasure and cognitive hiccups. On the other, I got a glimpse of the hidden constraint of these addictive and out of control drives, and tried sometimes to stop them myself, just to prove who was in control and whose life it was. Without an awareness of my own self, the intense sensitivity that had compelled me to reject closeness and personal and intentional self-expression came to have a name. That name was fear of emotions. It was named among so many other fears, such as fear of losing control and fear of others seeing the me in me, fear of self-exposure. By my teenage years, I began to be too aware of the feeling of being alien, unable to have even consistently shared true self-expression or real felt emotions with anyone. My answer to this was to follow and mimic anybody who would take me along for the ride, and to move through life as fast as possible so I didn't have to stop and feel how bad and out of control it all felt. After several years, I began to find out just how much passing for normal doesn't stand up to measure of consistency, and having tried my best and still found failure, I had to look elsewhere for help. I looked for answers, and after many years of finding bits of them, found some. By the age of 30, I knew what jigsaws were in my bucket. Problems of connection, problems of tolerance, and problems of control. I knew which of my jigsaws have a lot of pieces and which have a few. I knew how these jigsaws work together to help or hinder me in functioning and in knowing and being closer to myself and the world around me. I knew how these jigsaws collectively form some of my identity and expression, and some of what is not my identity or self-expression, but comes from my connections nevertheless, intentional or not. From knowing all of these things, I have been able to weed my own garden, to sort through the difference between what is useful, feels good, or feels like me, and what is counterproductive, doesn't feel right, and doesn't feel like me. Where I could get the weeds out, I did. Where I couldn't, I looked for what might have caused the weeds, in the hopes of undoing their cause. At the age of 25, a name was put to my bucket of jigsaws, and that name was autism. I then spent time with others who had this label, and some who had other related labels, and no label at all, and I saw my own system at work, sometimes more, sometimes less, in most of these people, but not all. I saw people wading through their own collection of mixed up jigsaws. I saw some people trying to sort through them and put them together or pretend they didn't exist. I saw some carers and professionals helping some people to sort through their jigsaws when they were still only wading. I saw others helping people to ignore their jigsaws when they'd been doing such a good job at sorting through them. I saw carers and professionals helping people to work with a type of jigsaw that they didn't have, when they actually had every other jigsaw but the one the carers and professionals were helping them work on. The most surprising thing of all that I saw was that most of the carers and professionals couldn't tell one jigsaw from the next most of the time. So many people live in a world where reading appearances is their focus. I move in a world where the necessity for me to do so many so-called normal things happens unnaturally and mechanically, and this means that I have come to rely on seeing systems rather than appearances. This is what this book is about. It is about helping carers and professionals to recognise all the different jigsaws that can be in a bucket, and to take them on a sort of journey that my own life took me. It just may be that in being able to tell one jigsaw piece from the next, they might be able to put one or more of these together and to have a little more success than they might have previously been having. My autism-related difficulties took me on a journey where perceptual problems and systems integration problems made the world seem empty, meaningless, and insignificant, and without interest or reward, and made my own body, voice, movements, and emotions estranged from me, overwhelming and alien. These problems took me on a journey where I learnt to act as if I had a sense of us and we, even if my systems integration problems made it very difficult to consistently process self and external other at the same time. An experience that is essential for grasping what social is, how to be it, and why you might want to be. My autism-related difficulties took me on a journey where sensory hypersensitivities made certain sounds, textures, patterns, colours my personal and private heaven. In the hands of others, other people who would indiscriminately inflict upon me the sounds, textures, patterns and colours I found overwhelming and intolerable, my sensory hypersensitivities became my social hell. It was a journey where emotional hypersensitivities made having a self difficult and showing it to be almost impossible, and like being choked and suffocated from the inside. Emotional hypersensitivity made contact with gentle, affectionate people give me the effect of being force-fed with a box of lemons. It made being social a sick joke, where the only life possible was one experienceable, one on a stage, where one cannot be oneself, except at the cost of being thought of the cost of losing thought or connection to emotional expression. It was also a journey where attention problems made life seem like a whirlpool, where an idea couldn't be held and connection couldn't be held, and I got pulled and tugged in an oblivion of activity. It was a journey where a sleep disorder put me to sleep with my eyes open and either froze my connection to my body or put my body and my voice on autopilot after any attempt of sustained attention. These things often put me into a compromising position of being a suggestible mirroring puppet or a zombie. It was a journey where the addiction of compulsion and the adrenaline highs they caused drowned out any remaining residue of real interest or want, thoughts or emotions, and made me an accomplice to the actions and expressions of a body, face, voice I didn't even feel was mine. Obsession and ritual demanded that the world worked within my boundaries or was discarded as was interference of anything as redundant as real emotions or closeness. On the journey, fear dominated choice and practicality, and each fear conquered merely replaced itself with a new form. My autism-related difficulties took me on a journey where my physical health fell apart from a combination of inherited faults, bad management, and the chronic stress of dealing with incomprehending world, which taught this camel to walk straight instead of taking the lorry load of straws off its back for the 30 years before it realised it had a choice. These are the reasons why, to me, there is no single thing called autism. Some camels have a lot of one type of straw on their backs. Some camels have a whole collection of different types of straws on their backs. Okay, I hope this has helped to give you some perspective. If it has helped, please like and share. Love and peace to you all, and remember, you're stronger than your struggles. Bye for now.